Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special live session Friday evening after the holiday. And thanks everyone for coming out. And just as a reminder, anyone that's watching or anyone that's here, you can submit cinnamon roll assignments for week 8 up until tonight, Friday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. We did extend the deadline for because it was a holiday yesterday, Thursday, so we extended it till today. And if anyone has any questions on that, I'll be available this evening if you need anything. And yeah, we saw some great cinnamon rolls, and that was kind of the, a little bit more of a beginning of our enriched doughs. And then this week for the brioche, very enriched dough. We talked about it in the live session. We have 50% butter, which is really high. Keep in mind, butter is soft and it gets soft when it's warm. It's very hard when it's cold. So if you're having any trouble with that dough, make sure that you're chilling it a little bit more. And as we talked about the brioche in the live session, I do recommend that overnight ferment for this one, absolutely, or at least, at least 6 hours. Let it get good and cold. And if your kitchen is really warm too, and you'll find these things in commercial kitchens can get pretty warm, even when they're air conditioned. If you have ovens, people in and out of ovens, and you have equipment running, just like compressors for refrigerators, they create a lot of heat in kitchens as well, in addition to the ovens. And even when you turn the ovens off, those compressors on the larger pieces of equipment, refrigerators and freezers, those are still working away. So things can get really warm in a commercial kitchen. So maybe if it's real warm, you don't want to pull out all of the dough at once. Maybe divide it into sections and then just pull out a section at a time to work on. So you'll, oh, we got a little bit of noise here. You'll kind of know once you start working with these doughs and once you get used to them, and when your environment changes and it's warmer, sometimes you'll kind of, you'll come up with a system of your own. But that's always an option, not pulling out all of the dough, especially if you're working in a warm bakery and have a very large batch of dough. You may want to divide that a little bit and just pull out what you can manage in that heat. So, and then as time goes on too, as you practice, it's a lot of repetition in this type of work. And as you practice and you repeat, you're going to get quicker and more efficient. So maybe you'll be able to, shape your dough a little bit quicker. So even with the small batch of dough that you're making for class, we can divide that one too and just pull out what you can handle working on at a time. And especially if you're in a warm environment, we're in the Midwest here, so it's getting pretty cool. We've got the heat on, but I know a lot of you don't have heat on yet, and it can be pretty warm. So you'll get a feel for it. Like I said in class, if it's sticky and unmanageable, just get it back in the refrigerator. All right, so far on the brioche assignment, does anyone have any questions on anything? Nope. Let me pull up the chat. Am I missing anything in the chat? Okay, Kathy asked, how do you fill it? So for the brioche for the week, we're not asking that you fill it. There is a babka filling recipe on the class page. I recommend saving that. And the babka is more that loaf that we showed in the live session. I can pull one up really quick so we can talk about that again. But you absolutely don't have to fill this one. We'd like to see some plain brioche, either, the tete or even the loaf that Chef Tom showed. So this is, we talked about this in the live session. This is the babka that you can make with brioche dough. So if you wanted to, you know, make some babka and show us some plain rolls, you can do that too, or some plain tots, but we want to see some plain brioche this week, and we want to see the interior. So this is the babka. You can put that filling down, and you can roll up the dough like a cinnamon roll almost. And for this one, where my cursor is, you can cut that roll in half and then braid it with the inside exposed, or you can just kind of fold it in three and bake it like that, or you could even kind of roll it up and put it in a cake pan, maybe 2 rolls like this one where my cursor is. Okay, so only do the dough and that's it. Yep, absolutely. You can just do the dough and that's it. So the babka filling was up on the class page, and it was in our educational department had it up there, so I thought I would leave it for you guys so you had it, and you could make, you know, half your dough with a small babka if you wanted, and then some plain ones. But we want to see some plain brioche so we can really see the interior of it and the exterior as well. Keep in mind with the brioche, it's heavier and it's going to be more yellow in color, and it's going to take longer to proof. And when you're baking your brioche, we recommend egg washing before it proofs, and then egg washing after it proofs when it goes into the oven. So 2 egg washes with the brioche, but it's okay if you forget the first one and you just do the second one. Just make sure that you have egg wash on this bread when it's going in the oven. Okay, guys, any questions on anything? Am I missing anything in the chat? Okay. Does the recipe make enough to do some rolls and the loaf like Chef Tom did, or does it only make one or the other? I'm not sure. I would have to take a look at that. Let me look at it and see if I can tell. Hang on for 1 second. Let me pull that up. All right. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me see. All right, I got the recipe. Let's go ahead and pull it up. Okay, so this is the recipe on the class page. So the total weight of the dough is 1,140 grams. So I think that when Chef Tom was doing the video, the 3 balls inside of that loaf were 200 grams each. So that's that's 600 grams for the loaf. So yeah, you'll have a little bit extra dough. So you could do the loaf, and then you could do some rolls, or you could do that loaf, and then if you wanted to explore the babka, make a babka as well. But we just want to see some plain brioche baked without any filling, so we can see that it's light and it's fluffy. So this, the interior of the brioche really needs to be light and fluffy and airy. Okay, does that help at all? All right, am I missing anything in the chat? Okay, good, good. And guys, as you're doing this, if you're working on it over the weekend, it's holiday for us, but I'll still be available. I may not get your questions answered as quick as I usually do, but yeah, definitely message me. All right, so any thoughts or questions on the brioche? Okay, so this is another one of these doughs that you can really make a lot of different things with it. I mean, just to, you know, in Chef Tom's video, he showed the loaf and he showed the classic tut with a fluted tin or in a muffin tin. That's with the little ball on top. That's a classic tut shape. And then he showed some rolls. You can fill those too. Probably when they're about half baked, you can make a little hole in the top and squeeze some ganache or some pastry cream in there. I'm sorry, when they're half proofed. You want to, if you're going to fill the rolls, you're going to want to fill them before they go in the oven. So I think halfway proof those rolls if you want to fill them, and then I usually kind of slit a little bit with a knife, and then I'll squeeze in some ganache or pastry cream, then let them continue proofing and bake them. So right there in just the video that he showed like 3 things that you could make with the brioche. So you could make one of these mother doughs, and you can make so many things with it. And, you know, we're talking about the babka. And then in class, I mentioned something that I like to make with brioche, and I like to make the Saint-Tropez tart. And I just want to show you guys this. Just some things to think about for later on if you have a bakery or a business and you make this one mother brioche dough. You know, if you make a big batch of brioche, definitely don't take it all out of the fridge at one time to work on, but you can divide like a big batch of brioche into, you know, 6, and you could make like 6 different things with it, and you can do a lot with filling. So this Saint-Tropez tart that I like to make with brioche, I just wanted to show you guys this if you haven't had this or if you haven't made it before. It's really delicious and it's very unique, and it's kind of like almost like a cream tart. And this it's a brioche, and you kind of you make like a disc and you flatten it out, and then after it bakes and cools, you slice it and you can fill it with whatever you like. And oftentimes you're going to see this pearl sugar on top of the Saint-Tropez tart. I think this one is filled with just some pastry cream, but you can fill it with different flavors. And I like this one that Alain Ducasse made, and it looks like he has a little bit of streusel on top here, which is really a nice touch. And then sometimes you'll see them just finished off with some powdered sugar. So you could even do streusel with powdered sugar. I think this one has some almonds on it. So the almonds you would put on the dough before you bake it, and then they're going to bake kind of into the dough. All right, and then this pearl sugar that we use is just a really coarse sugar, and you could buy it from, I usually get mine at Sur La Table. There's a store by my house, and you could get it from Amazon, and this is the one that I use, and it's Lars Belgium sugar. Oftentimes people will put this on like Belgium waffles, and this is a 2-pack. They're 8 ounces and it's $11. So it's not cheap. So I just buy a little pack every now and then, and I use it for just, you know, one thing that I'm making. But it seems like this pearl sugar oftentimes shows up on brioche. So if you see, you know, crystals on top of their brioche, you may think it's salt at first, but it's actually the pearl sugar. All right, so really quick with this Saint-Tropez tart, another thing that I want to show you too is you can make minis in different flavors, and this is from like a little bakery in Saint-Tropez, and looks like they have a vanilla, and then they've got some different flavors here. So you could even make minis and you know, sell them in different flavors. So it's really limitless what you can do with this dough. So does anyone have any thoughts on anything that they've seen that's made with this brioche dough? Okay, so Jesse saw a similar recipe on King Arthur for vanilla-filled brioche rolls, and King Arthur is just a great source for everything. They have a lot of information on their website, and I like their recipes, their formulas as well, and they have those converters on them too. So like I said, this classic brioche dough is nice. You can do a lot with it, but just don't leave it at room temperature. Apple cinnamon brioche bread, Kathy saw that one. There's a couple other things that I just kind of wanted to show you guys, things that you could do with the brioche. And there was a, oh, what did I see here? These are some tarts that are made with brioche dough as well. They've got some fruits on them. This one's kind of nice. It's an almond frangipan, and we have that frangipan filling in our text. And there's some apples on here. So this is beautiful. So you could do tarts like this, and also donuts are great to make with brioche dough. And you want to be careful because with the donut, you're going to be you know, rolling out the dough and then cutting the donut and then put it on a flour tray, and it's got to proof before you fry it in the oil. Your oil is usually about 325 degrees. You don't want it really hot, just regular, you know, vegetable oil. But you've got to carefully pick those brioche donuts up and put them in the oil. So some chefs will use like their bench scraper, or what's really nice for this, if you have one of those thin fish spatulas, those are really good for something like this, and you can pick the donut up and then you can just kind of put it in the oil carefully. Always be careful when you're putting anything in oil that you're not holding it too high, because you don't want it to splash. Or, you know, even the water when we did the bagels and the pretzels, so you want to just kind of like gently put things in oil or water. Okay, and this is kind of a neat one too. These are brioche donuts that are cut in squares, so you don't even need a cutter for these. You can just you know, roll out a rectangle and then cut squares, and you could use any small cutter that you have for the center. I think they use a square one for this, but if you have, like, you know, a heart shape or a round shape or any shape would work well for making that center hole. So I kind of thought these were nice with that square shape. And just a lot that you can do. I thought that I saw a vanilla, I thought that I saw a larger tart that was like a vanilla and apple that was kind of almost like on a pan. Oh, here it is. This one is kind of neat. So you could kind of make a tart like this, or even a galette. You could make it round using this dough and then just put your filling on top and bake it. So a lot that you can do with this dough. It's really delicious, and it's pretty easy to proof and bake. The difficulty with this dough is in that mixing with the different stages, where you're starting out with the dough hook and it's shaggy and then it comes together. And then you change over to the paddle and then you add the butter, and then all of a sudden it's like sticking again, and you kind of have to bring it back and knead it some more by putting that hook on. So it's definitely something that takes your attention. It needs your attention, and it takes time as well. But once you have the dough all mixed and then you proof it in the fridge overnight, and as long as you're not leaving it at room temperature where it's getting super sticky where you can't handle it, it's pretty easy to work with. A nice chilled brioche dough, and you could do a lot with it. So just some things to consider for later on when you have your own place. Another really nice mother dough, and this is a really nice enriched mother dough, so you can do a lot with this as far as desserts. All right, guys, so any thoughts or questions on the brioche? Jesse asked, would you ever make baked brioche donuts or only fry? I would only fry. I thought about that before, because I've got some tins that I make like cake donuts in where you bake them. But if you're baking the brioche in a donut shape, it's really just a brioche bread. So I would say absolutely for the donuts, stick with the frying. Okay. All right, guys. Yeah, any questions or any thoughts on what you can do with that brioche dough? It's pretty versatile, but guys, keep in mind too, when we make the French bread, that's kind of like our starting point to our bread family tree that we talked about. So we start out with the French bread, and we are, just using some flour. We're using bread flour, and we've got water, and we've got yeast. Sometimes we'll have a little sugar in there. Sometimes we'll have a little bit of oil in there, but it's just some basic, inexpensive ingredients. Flour is not expensive at all, and yeast isn't too expensive, and we're not using that much either. And then of course we have water. But when we start getting into these enriched doughs like brioche, we've got eggs in them, we've got sugar in them, and we've got butter in them, and these are things that cost money. So you're going to want to adjust your pricing accordingly too. So if you think about 50% butter in this dough, and then we're making some plain brioche brioche in class, but if you start making different things with your brioche and using it as a mother dough to make, you know, some of these tarts, or Kathy mentioned an apple cinnamon brioche, or even the chocolate babka, you're, you know, even adding more expense into this item. So make sure that you're pricing it accordingly. For sale, it's going to be much more expensive to buy anything made with brioche than it would be just your loaf of French bread. So keep in mind, keep track of any inclusions that you're putting in things, or any fillings in addition to that dough. So I would say anything made with the brioche, you're going to have to charge more, because your food cost is going to be higher, because it's going to cost you more just to make the mother dough. And then if you do something like that apple tart that I showed you in that rectangle pan, you've got apples, and then you may have other fillings, or even the Saint-Tropez tart, you're going to have that pearl sugar, which isn't cheap, and then maybe some sort of cream filling as well. So always make sure that you're keeping an eye on what you're spending on your ingredients, and that's your food cost, and you have to, you know, make money. So make sure that you're charging enough for anything made with a brioche as well. So if you, you know, if you think that your customers may not, you know, go for the higher prices, then maybe you want to cut back and not make so many things with it. Or if you're in an area and your target demographic is kind of like a medium income or a medium high income, maybe these are things that you would want to make that they would sell, that people would be willing to pay for. So, you know, we're talking about menus in 185 in our target demographic, and it has a lot to do with, you know, what we're spending on our ingredients, and then the price that we have to charge for them on our menu. So kind of a lot of thought goes into everything, and that's why in, for example, in menu class, we're getting you started on making menus and kind of figuring things out, and target demographics and things to have on your items. So on your menu, items to have on your menu, so you're prepared when you go to have your own business someday, and you can make a menu that's going to be you know, what you want for your concept, and also it's going to be something that's going to help your business stay alive and keep it making money. All right, guys, any questions on brioche or anything that we've done so far, cinnamon rolls or brioche? No. Okay, keep in mind, even though it's a holiday for the brioche for week 9, our brioche is still due on Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, same day. And you guys have a discussion forum too on the Sweet Joe, where you're going to be doing a research assignment on an ethnic product. So let's go ahead and take a look at that discussion forum really quick. And hang on for 1 second, guys. This is a really fun forum, so I recommend posting in there. Your initial post is due by tomorrow, Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then your 2 peer replies are due by Tuesday, but you can post in the forum as much as you like. All right, let me go ahead and pull that up. Let me have a little water first. Okay. So, yeah, you guys, like I said, you can absolutely post in this forum as much as you like. We're just looking for the minimum, so we can grade you on that initial post and 2 peer replies. So this is your forum on sweet dough. So you're going to research a traditional ethnic sweet dough, and it can be anything made with a sweet dough from anywhere in the world. And like I said, it can be something that, you know, is maybe a tradition with your family or someone's family that you know, or something that you've had somewhere, or something that you've made before. But we wanted to have an ethnic background, a little bit of a story behind it. We want you to find a link for either a video or a recipe, and then we'd like 5 to 6 sentences briefly describing the history of the bread. And if you're having a hard time finding a lot of history on it, you can let me know and I can help you as well. But you should be able to find something that you could write about 5 or 6 sentences on and what interests you about this spread. It could be, you know, you saw a picture of it and you've always wanted to make it. So this is really a fun assignment. And I would have a Google Doc ready and kind of start saving the links and for the other, oh, sorry guys, start saving some of the links for the posts that really interest you if that's a recipe that you want to make someday. So there's going to be a lot of information floating around in the forum and you may see something on there. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, Chef Susie is a little worse today. So you may see something on the forum that maybe you want to make someday, you think it's really cool, and you may find yourself, you know, forgetting the name. So start a Google Doc and then just put some of the links in there and then you'll be happy that you have it, and it can be like that someday thing that you want to make someday. But as far as the forum, does anyone have any questions on what we're looking for the forum? No, am I missing anything in the chat? No, everyone is so quiet. Is everyone tired from the holiday? I know we were up late last night too, and I had quite a ride home. Yeah, I know. All right, hang on a second, guys. I need to have a little more water. Okay, so when we meet next Friday, guys, we're going to talk about sourdough. So I know that I've been wanting to do that for a while. So our special live session next Friday will be focused on sourdough. Okay, and sourdough starters, and we'll review a little bit on croissant week, but we'll use most of the time talking about sourdough and sourdough starters next week. All right, guys. And as far as the coming week with the croissant, does anyone, excuse me. Guys, hang on. I'm going to turn my camera off for a minute. I'll be right back. I need to have a little more water. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I am back. All right, Chef Susie is just a little hoarse, so I hope I can make it through the rest of this here. But what was I saying? So next week we're going to talk about sourdough starter, and we'll talk a little bit about croissant week, and then we'll go right into sourdoughs next Friday. Okay, and sourdoughs are fun and they're not very hard to make, and there's a lot of different ways that you can do starters, and we'll talk about that a little bit more next Friday. But next week we're going to be making croissants, which is our first assignment on laminated dough. And as I mentioned, guys, the next 3 weeks for your assignments are going to be taking you more time. You're going to need to focus on them a little bit, and like starting out with the brioche this week, and then with the croissant, you're going to be laminating the dough. You're going to be rolling butter in and creating layers, and you're going to do folds, and then you're going to leave the dough rest. So it's not anything that you have to watch, but you're going to have rest time in the refrigerator in between the folds of the dough. So these next 3 weeks are going to keep you busy with assignments. So if you have any makeup assignments that you would like to do or you need to do, make sure that you start doing them soon, because you're going to be busy the next couple of weeks. So if you have, makeup assignments, start doing them, one at a time, because you don't want to wait until the end, because these last 3 weeks in class go really, really fast. Okay. All right. So guys, any questions on the croissants for next week? Has anyone taken a look at that so far? No. Okay. You're going to need butter. So we're using a lot of butter this week for the brioche, and you're going to need a lot of butter with the croissant. And remember, this is unsalted butter, and it's butter and not margarine. Like I said, if you see something for 89 cents for 1 pound, it's probably not butter. It's probably margarine. And any questions, if you're not sure, just send me a picture of the package and I can help you with it. Okay. So we always use unsalted butter in our baking, but I did find a couple of articles on brioche where the brioche was made with salted butter. So maybe after you explore brioche this week, if you wanted to experiment later on, maybe you could try making that with the salted butter and see how you like the flavor. But for this week with the brioche, definitely follow the recipe the way that it is with the unsalted butter. But like I said, I saw a few articles on that. I saw a recipe on a blog that I really like. It's called Food 52. And that's a blog that I follow, and it's one that I really like. And they had a salted brioche on there. So just, you know, something to think of later on for like different twists on your brioche. All right, guys. So what do you think? Is everyone excited about doing croissants next week? Yeah. We got the thumbs up from Linda over there, so she's excited. So just keep in mind for croissants next week, that's going to be week 10. I can't believe I'm saying week 10. It seems like we just reached the halfway point and everything is going really fast. So with the croissants, allow yourself enough time. That dough has got to rest. You're going to be doing folds, and that butter cannot be too soft or warm when you're doing the folds because you're not going to get the flakiness at all. So make sure you're allowing yourself enough time when you're doing croissants next week in week 10. All right, so maybe you want to start, you know, kind of planning week 10 a little bit early this week, but absolutely work on your croissants for next week over next weekend for sure. You don't want to wait until like Tuesday to do the croissant for sure. So make sure you're starting on that early so you can get your nice layers in and chill your dough in between all the folds so you have enough time. All right, guys, what do you think? Any questions on anything? Everyone's so quiet. I know. I know. Chef Susie's a little quiet today, too. So, as far as when we do croissants next week, if you guys want to start taking a look at some croissants, the beauty of croissants, not only those flaky layers, but you can fill your croissants with different things. So as always, we want you to make some plain ones, but croissant dough is pretty versatile. And with the classic shape, you could do the classic, you know, horn shape with the croissant. And a lot of times in French bakeries with the croissant, you'll see a little bit more of like a folded croissant. And that one is usually a chocolate one, and there'll be like a little chocolate chip on top, so you can, you know, that there's chocolate inside. And I like to make a ham and cheese croissant. I'll fill mine with ham and cheese. And there's a bakery that I went to by my house. I think I told you guys they had an apricot one. They had a croissant that was filled with apricot. So croissants can be filled too. So if you want to explore some filled croissants for week 10, you may want to start researching that now. But for your assignment, we're going to want to see some plain ones, but you can absolutely experiment with some filling of croissants for sure. So Jesse feels like it's about midnight for some reason. Well, you know, I think that the turkey has tryptophan in it. which is also in bananas, naturally occurring, and something that makes you sleepy. So with a lot of turkey, and even if you had like turkey with like banana cream pie, you'd be really ready for a nap. So maybe we still have a little bit of tryptophan in our system. If we're eating leftovers today, I love leftover turkey. We had some for dinner already. Yeah. So yeah, that could be why we're all a little sleepy from the turkey and the tryptophan. But I think that you guys are going to have a lot of fun with the brioche and the dough, and also with croissants next week with the lamination. And then in finishing week, which is kind of week 11 and week 12, combined, we are going to be doing puff pastry dough, which is more lamination. So you're going to be using butter this week, butter next week in croissants, and then butter again in laminated dough. Okay, so really good point Karen mentioned in the chat. Let me read this. The recipe in our book, they mixed the yeast in the water and then added the ingredients separately. And you followed Chef Tom's straight dough method. Either one is okay. Yeah, you can do this either way. Absolutely. And as I mentioned in the live session, if we are using instant yeast, and it should dissolve fine with the straight dough method. But if you're having a problem with little pieces of yeast in your dough, I recommend dissolving it in a little bit of water first. Sometimes you'll see that when you use active dry yeast rather than instant yeast for the straight dough method, because active dry yeast, you need to dissolve it in some water. But if you're finding that you're seeing little pieces of yeast in your dough, or Chef Jason is pointing that out in your feedback, then I recommend mixing it in the water, dissolving a little bit. I think in your photos, your required photos for the brioche assignment, I think that it's number 2 or number 3 photo where it says to show the yeast dissolved in the water. But if you did the straight dough method, then you would just skip that picture. So and then you could make a note in your assignment for Chef Jason that you did the straight dough method as Chef Tom showed in the video, and that's just fine because you're using the instant yeast, so it works just fine for a straight dough method. Does that help you, Karen? I know that's a little confusing when the recipe doesn't line up with the video, but absolutely love the shaping that Chef Tom did in his video. And then remember he, okay, good. Remember in the video when he formed that classic tet, he kind of took the roll, and then he took his hand and he made that, you know, kind of larger bottom than the smaller ball that's going to go on top. And then he twisted the ball and he kind of like pressed down on that roll, the base of the roll, and his fingers were touching the bench or the table. And then I also put up that other video that I showed in class where the chef was making the tet by making a longer neck with that wider base and the little top. And then he made a hole in the wider base and kind of pulled it through. So I think I labeled it on the class page as another way to form the classic tet. So I did put that video up for you guys, and that's how I form my classic tet when I make it, because it just, for me, it's just worked a little bit better. It's a little more foolproof. And sometimes those little circles on top, sometimes, you know, in the proofing and baking, they're going to sometimes, you know, go off to the side a little bit, but you want to kind of minimize that as much as you can. But it does happen though. So, Jessie has a large brioche pan. Do we shape the tet differently in the large pan? You can shape it the same way in for the large pan. And with the large pan for the tet, I would maybe, depending on the size of your pan, I think that I had like I had a 7-inch one that I did like 500 grams of dough, Yours is like 8.75 inches, so it's a good size pan. What I recommend doing for the dough, I can't give you an exact weight on the dough, but if you look at like the tet and the loaf that Chef Tom formed, after the dough was in the pan is about halfway up. So I kind of follow that as a guide, like maybe have the dough halfway or just a little bit more up. But keep in mind with larger things, they're going to take longer to proof and they're going to take longer to bake. In this bread, the brioche, it gets darker like the challah. So if you find that it's not done on the inside, then you can cover it with some foil or some parchment to protect it so it can finish baking. And then with this one, with any bread, you'll feel a little bit more lightness. You can tell that it's done because it's going to be a little bit lighter. You can kind of feel it if it's baking and you're baking a loaf and you're not sure if it's done. Kind of just pick it up in the oven a little bit and feel it. I wouldn't move it around and take it out so it doesn't collapse on you. You still want to be very delicate with it, but you can feel like for the heaviness, and what you could do is then let it bake a little bit longer and feel it again, and you can kind of feel it lighten up because that hydration is evaporating in it. But those, the large brioche and those fluted brioche pans, those are really beautiful. And those would look really nice in a bakery. All these different shapes and sizes of the brioche, just the bread alone, without even doing any filling, you could make a real nice variety. So let's say you opened up, you know, a bakery, you would have maybe your French bread, and then maybe you would have, you know, some focaccia, and then maybe you would have some milk bread rolls, and then you could have some, you know, brioche rolls. And right there you have a nice variety with 4 different doughs and making a lot of different shapes and sizes. So always when we're working on these doughs each week, think of the dough as a mother dough. So I showed you a lot of different things that you can make with this brioche as a mother dough. So this is going to help you produce things more efficiently rather than making like little batches of dough for every little thing. You could make one mother dough and you can make a lot of different things. And what's nice about the brioche is it's enriched, so you could even do like more dessert type things with it. You could do, you know, the tarts or galettes that are filled, or you could do the Saint-Tropez tart, or you could, you know, I think it was Kathy that mentioned like an apple cinnamon bread. So you could make the brioche just a very basic bread in the loaf like Chef Tom showed, or in the loaves, or in rolls, or even the classic tet. And then you could make it into kind of a sweeter item too. So that's what's ideal about the brioche. It's really versatile in that way. Monkey bread, yep, that's another good one. That one's delicious too. I haven't had monkey bread in a long time. All right, guys. So what do you think about croissant week? Ready? All right. Okay. Well, you know, next week when we get together on Friday, we'll talk a little bit about croissant, but we'll spend most of the time talking about the sourdough. But something to think about too when you're researching croissants a little bit and some fillings, if you want to explore fillings. Later on, when you make croissants, some chefs will take the butter and they'll flavor the butter, and then they'll roll the flavored butter in, and then they'll get the kind of the flavor kind of embedded in the croissant. So I've seen that a lot with like herbs and spices, or like diced onion or garlic. Some chefs will, what they'll do is they'll put the butter in the mixer, and they'll add some, you know, herbs and onions and, you know, maybe some garlic to it. And then they'll take it out, and then they'll kind of pat it into a rectangle shape, and then they'll use that flavored butter to roll that into the croissant. So that's kind of a fun way to add flavor to your croissant as well. Okay, Jesse, really good point. Bread pudding. We talked about bread pudding a little bit with our leftover bread. She made a white chocolate croissant bread pudding with leftover croissant. That sounds absolutely delicious. And how did you put the white chocolate in there? Did you melt it? That one sounds good. That'd be good with some raspberries, some fresh raspberries.
I use the Ghirardelli white chocolate chips
Okay.
and mixed it in with the custard. So the chocolate chips were set, they didn't really set up, they just kind of were floating in there. So they're spread around throughout the bread
Oh,
pudding.
how that sounds wonderful. It sounds divine. So, yeah, bread pudding is a great option, and you may want to consider like a fun flavored bread pudding, like this one. The white chocolate sounds fabulous. Just to use up some of your breads in the bakery, and you could your bread pudding, you bake it. You could bake it in like a square pan, and then you could sell squares of bread pudding, or you could even invest in little individual aluminum cups and do small bread puddings. And there's just a lot that you can do with bread pudding. And French toast is great for leftover bread. I know that I talk about that all the time, and it's one of my favorites. And you can do so much with French toast. But yeah, consider having bread pudding on your menu. I think that every place that I've ever worked, I've had it on some menu, whether it was on a buffet. I know that when I worked at the Metropolitan Club, we had several dining rooms, and we did have one room that was just a lunchtime buffet. And at least once or twice a week, I would have warm bread pudding in a chafing dish, and then I would put warm caramel sauce right next to it. So I was just using up like my leftover danishes and croissants. So what's nice too about making bread pudding with danishes that are filled, like you have lemon and blueberry and raspberry and cheese danish, and you're just cutting them up and you're just kind of using all that for your bread pudding. So it's kind of like nice little fruity supplies surprises in your bread pudding. So bread pudding is it's so much fun. If you guys haven't made it, I recommend making a batch with your leftover breads, and you'll really be surprised. And it's so delicious. And what I usually do is with my bread, for my bread pudding, I toast it before I use it. And then I make a mixture with I have a basic mixture that I make with half and half cream and sugar and eggs and vanilla. So I just have a basic mix. And then I'll spray my pan and I put my toasted pieces of bread in there. I usually cut them in like 1 or 1.5 inch pieces. And I put my toasted bread in my pan, and then I pour my liquid over it, and I leave it sit in the refrigerator overnight. So I toast my bread so it soaks up more hydration. It's going to soak up more of that flavor with that mixture that you're making. And then I bake it in a water bath for, however long. If it's a larger pan, it's going to take longer. And then, little smaller individuals take less time. And with my bread pudding too, sometimes I'll top it off with caramel sauce, or I'll even brush the top with apricot glaze, because it looks kind of plain when it comes out of the oven. They could put a glaze on top of it. It really finishes it off. So you could make a very unique bread pudding for the restaurant that you're working in or your bakery, and it will go over well. People really love bread pudding because it's kind of moist, it's not dry, and it's got a lot of flavor in it too. So yes, oh my goodness, now I'm hungry for bread pudding. It's kind of the opposite of stuffing. It's like the dessert of stuffing. So as if we didn't have enough stuffing yesterday, right? But guys, any thoughts or anything that you guys have made bread wise? No? Yeah, we're really getting near the end. I know that we're only in week 9, but we've got 10, and then we've got 11 our finishing week. So are there any gray areas in any of the weeks that we've done assignments in that anyone has any questions on? So keep in mind, you can always message me, and I'm available even after class is over. So I don't have, I was going to look up your instructor for your next class. I don't have that. We'll have to talk about that in our Wednesday class. And yeah, I'm going to be carrying on over in BK 101. But I know I mentioned this in the Wednesday class. If anyone would like to join in my 101 classes, my new class is starting at the first, after the first of the year when we come back from our winter break. Just let me know if you'd like to come to a 101 class, and I'll send you the Zoom code, and you can say, hello to the class, or you could just even be quietly in the chat if you like. But you guys are all welcome to come and cheer on the new class and share any words of wisdom. Yeah. Yeah, remember when you guys started with it week 1 and week 2? Yeah, it's hard because it's all, it's the website is new, and there's kind of how we do things, it's new. And remember, I told you you're going to get used to it and it's going to become easier, and it did, didn't it? Like submitting your assignments, and then the assignment every week and the discussion forum. So yeah, you kind of get used to it. It's kind of like, baking, repeating things, and then it becomes easier. Oh, okay, so Jessie made her bread pudding in muffin tins with a nice crispy edge, and that's a great idea too, absolutely. So yeah, a lot that you can do with bread pudding. So I recommend making bread pudding. Like I said, if you haven't made it yet, be sure to give it a try, because it definitely has a place in the kitchen. And I know that Chef Jason mentioned, making croutons with your leftover breads too. And it can't really do those with like your Danishes and your cinnamon rolls. So those like sweeter things are great for bread pudding. But if you're having like a bakery cafe and you're going to have salads on your menu, definitely make your own breadcrumbs. Restaurants do that all the time. So it's not really leftover bread. It's just kind of your bread used in a different way. So it's not like that it's bad. It just became the hydration just kind of it evaporated. So what a better thing to make than a crouton, right? All right, guys. Yeah, that's kind of all I had. Do we have any thoughts or questions? Like I said, are you guys thinking of anything from the weeks past that we've done that is a little bit of a gray area? Or how about, has anyone been practicing their assignments from the past weeks? Yeah, you guys been practicing a little bit. What kind of fun things are you coming up with? I know I got a couple of messages about milk rolls for Thanksgiving, which was great, show off to everyone in the family. Yeah, Linda's got the thumbs up. I got a message from you. Yeah. I know your family's going to expect baked bread, fresh baked bread all the time. All right, guys, I know I would always, especially when I first started baking, I was on this croissant thing for a while, and I would always bring fresh baked croissants to our Thanksgiving, because I would work in the morning, bake a bunch of croissants, and then I'd like bring some home with me. So we actually, one of the places that I worked at, they only had like a small functioning bakery within this hotel when I first started, and then we kind of expanded it. They expanded the hotel, so they kind of like moved everything over, and then the bakery got kind of moved into one of the old like banquet table storage rooms. So we're able to, create a new bakery, and we're able to buy equipment because we had, a plan and a business plan for our owner. And so we bought equipment, and then we bought like a walk-in refrigerator for the bakery, and then the tables, and then we had a big mixer that we moved over there, and we got another smaller one, and then we got a rotating oven and a proof box and a sheeter, and we got a curler that curled up the croissant. So the goal of, one of the goals of the new bakery was to come up with a croissant that was kind of like a dinner roll. and make those fresh. So we came up with a croissant that was really kind of an enriched dough as well. It was kind of a richer dough. It didn't have sugar in it, but it was a soft, rich dough. And then we did the roll-in, and it made it even richer. So we made this our type of croissant, and we made those for the bread baskets for like the banquets, and we would make like sometimes like, I don't know, 1,200, 1,500 in one night. So, you know, I had like a whole crew that, you know, whole little crew that just did croissants, and, you know, they would sheet them out and cut them. And then the dough sheeter, it has, you can have cutters made for them, or you can buy cutters where you bring down the cutter and then you turn the belt on, and the dough kind of goes on the cutter and it gets cut. So the croissant triangles would get cut, and then we put them in this curler, and then it would spit them out and they'd be curled already. We just had to put them on a pan. And then we would have fun with the curler, like trying to make filled croissants with the curler, and it was just made for like plain croissants. I mean, sometimes we could do some cinnamon ones and run them through there, but we couldn't do any filling with the curler. But it was like, it had little belts on it too. So we ended up having this croissant production, and then people would actually come there for these fresh croissants, because when they went on the banquet tables and then for the dining room too, they were like warm still from the oven. So they would just be warm enough where you could pick them up. So that was like our little croissant production that was very successful. So it was kind of fun. Like I said, we made it a pretty enriched dough, so it was a nice dinner roll, and it was something that was like uniquely their own, and we kind of came up with that. So we could do you know, breakfast croissants, and then we could do like this dinner croissant roll. So we made it kind of universal. So it was actually kind of fun and a whole lot of work at the same time. But yeah, you guys are going to have a lot of fun with croissants, and a lot of flavors that you can do. Like I said, when you're thinking about croissant week, I know we have to get through brioche week, but when you're thinking about croissant week, you know, research some if you want to do some filling, but we want to see some plain ones as well. And then that one, we'll want to see it cut open, and you can really see the interior of the croissant, all those layers. But yeah, filling croissants is definitely an option for next week. All right, guys, so what do you think? Any thoughts or questions on anything? Does anyone want to share anything that they've been practicing so far? No? All right, let me know. You can also put it in the class cafe if you've been practicing anything and want to share pictures up there. That's a fun place too. All right, so be sure that you're doing your initial post for that, the forum on the ethnic sweetbread. Do a little research on it. If you need help, if there's something that you saw in a picture and you know you don't know the name of it, I can help you as well. You could send me the picture. If you're having a hard time finding any history, just let me know. I can help you. But Wikipedia is great. They usually have everything in Wikipedia. Sometimes it's just a little bit, but that's a really good place to get you started on your research. You'll be able to get some information from there. But I think you guys are really going to love this forum. So have a lot of fun with it. Be in touch with me if you need me. I'll be available. And if your cinnamon roll assignment wasn't graded, Chef Jason is going to continue with grading on Monday, and he'll have all of the cinnamon rolls graded by like Monday in the evening. All right, so if you haven't heard back, that's why, because we kind of put a little bit hold on the grading for the holiday. All right, guys. Well, if you don't have any questions, I'm going to thank you for coming out tonight and the day after Thanksgiving. It was really nice to see everyone. Thanks for stopping by. And like I said, when we get together next Friday, we're going to talk sourdough. So yeah, that'll be fun. Okay. All right, any thoughts on anything before we go? All right, guys, well, have a great weekend. Be in touch with me if you need me. I'll be a little bit in and out, but I'll get back to you, okay? All right, good night, everyone. Great to see you. Thanks again for stopping by. Okay, bye.